Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis Scimeca, senior editor for technology at IndustryWeek, and my editor in chief, Robert Schoenberger, has allowed me yet again to hijack the production pulse today. We're talking with Mike Payne. He's the president and owner of Hill Manufacturing Fabrication. We ran into each other a couple of months ago at a conference, and Mike told me this, I thought, fascinating story about how he's wiring his plants up for data capture, what he's doing with the information. So I want to bring that story to you. So before we go any further, Mike, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed. I think this is maybe our third time we've talked, and I've enjoyed it every time. So, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Mike Payne with Hill Manufacturing Fabrication, which is really kind of an umbrella for um, five shops that we have, all kind of in the Northeast Oklahoma area um, at this time. Looking to expand that maybe a little bit. The I'm also the host of a couple of podcasts, Making Chips and By the Numbers. So Making Chips is a kind of a a little bit more of a generalized manufacturing podcast where we really try to equip and inspire manufacturing leaders. And then my By the Numbers podcast is spelled BUY because a lot of my background is in finance, accounting, so forth. And so we're really, it's all things kind of finance, accounting, data driven decisions, that type of stuff. So.
So, as I mentioned, he's not just a podcast host, he has networking new plants down to a science, which is why I want to speak to him about this, the more the how and more importantly, why of capturing data. So, Mike, when we first met, you were talking to me about, I believe it was your very first plant that you purchased, I think in 2018.
That's
I have
correct.
that right? And you were saying how you didn't have any data capture of that plant when you first started. And when you first turned on machine monitoring, when you got the plant wired up, you said you were running 30% spindle utilization. And when they began capturing and analyzing data, that changed to the 50% to 16% range. Now, to what do you attribute? That's like double. To what do you attribute that change just by looking at data? Like,
Yeah,
what?
I mean, everybody's taught. I mean, we've all heard our entire careers. I mean, what's measured matters, right? So, and when we weren't tracking it, it didn't matter. So we talk about not having data capture on the front end. I mean, I guess we did have data capture. It was garbage in, garbage out, right? So it was a paper based system where we would give an operator at the machine like, here's this job you're running. It should take 8 minutes apart. Well, remarkably, how long do you think it took? 8 minutes apart, right? I mean, because they just filled in the blanks of like, well, I was here 8 hours and I got 64 parts or whatever. Um, it might have taken them eight and a half. It might have taken them seven, but there was no tie to that data, right? So it was handwritten data. Um, so like our first step kind of into capturing data was by implementing a good ERP system where we were really capturing the time spent on, I mean, essentially everything, right? So we'll log time even against like Kaizen events. Like, so how much time are we spending on Kaizen? How much time are we spending on training? How much time are we spending on the actual job? Whether that's in setup or runtime, first article time. So that gives you an early look, and I would say even just with that, things bumped, right? Well, probably didn't really bump a ton from an efficiency standpoint because you were capturing better time, right? So you were getting more accurate data. Some were high, some were low on a paper-based system. They level out. But then the missing piece, you mentioned like the machine monitoring, right? So like once we get that and it's tied to our ERP system, it now knows what we expect to have happen based on history and estimates and all that type of stuff. But now you're getting what really happened, right? So, and you throw that data up on a screen, and naturally things just get better, right? So part of that is the old Hawthorne effect, right? That if I see how I'm doing, I'm going to do better, right? I mean, if you played an entire football game and didn't have the scoreboard on, some people are going to know, some people aren't going to know what the score is. If I see I'm down by 3 with 2 minutes left, I'm going to probably act a little bit different than if I have no idea, right? So
Yeah.
same thing in a machine shop. It's someone's looking up there, and like our machine monitoring gives you a grade. Like this machine's running at an A, a B, a C, whatever. Well, just the natural competitiveness in a human being, right? most people want to perform at an A, right? We all want to be successful. So, yeah, I think just that natural effect saw that immediate bump, right? From a say a 30% to a 50%. Then when you can start dialing in, okay, well, what's keeping us from being a 60, 70, 80, and you have the data to make good decisions, then you can start seeing those improvements.
So this is the first plant, excuse me, between 2018 and 2021. So that was how long it took to get the systems and processes in place for this first plant. Can you talk about kind of what was happening in that 3 years? Is there a need to kind of break that down? What was the journey before you got the data and really able to start rolling with it?
Yeah, so if we back all the way up to my history, 30 years ago when I come out of college, I started a software company and I actually did shop floor data collection. So I've been around data collection really my entire career. And so, here I am, I come in, I buy this shop, I can see the data in the financials, but I can't see the data on the floor and what's affecting those numbers. So, yeah, I just immediately start looking for opportunities to get more information so that I can weigh options. So, like I mentioned, so the first step for us in 2018 was actually getting into an ERP system that allowed us to start collecting a lot of that data. Then, from there, we started just drilling down and going, okay, well, if we've got this data, here's where we're still lacking some data, right? So the ERP maybe gave us today's performance on a job. Machine monitoring gives us this minute's, performance on a job, right? So where I used to know how we did today, now I know the first time we run a part, how we're doing on that, right? So when you look at that 3-year period, it started with, collecting some data, deciding what data was important, and then the data that was important, how do we improve that data, right? So it was an involvement, over that say 3-year period, to get there. And of course, we had COVID punch us in the mouth in the middle of that. That changed a lot. Although in some ways, I would say it changed us for the better, right? Because we had a serious blow to our revenue, but it gave us time to work on ourselves too. We made it through that without having to do any layoffs or anything like that. So what we did is we were able to use that same labor we had to just make ourselves bigger, stronger, and faster. And a lot of that was through doing better data collection, right? I mean, so even where I talk about in the ERP system being able to track Kaizen events, right? How much time are we spending on improving ourselves, right? And are we spending enough? Are we spending too much? Things like that, or the time, the money and the time and the effort you spend on having a tool room manager. Do we see that in a reduction of setup times, right? Those types of things. That data gives us what we need to make decisions, right?
So what were you? So you said you have an ERP system. What were the other kind of software, hardware that you installed in your first plant during that 3-year period?
Yeah, so we had to start with. I think it's important for anybody looking at their tech stack, if you will, right? You got to start with, I think, with your communications platform, right? So one of the first things we had to do was really just upgrade our network, right? So whether that was hard lines, that was soft lines, I mean, Wi-Fi, that was servers, and all those types of things. Historically had been, maybe just kind of patched together. It's like, here, there's this old, I brought an old computer from home. We can use it here. We can, so, starting with that infrastructure of just having good systems in place, standardizing on some of the equipment that we used, especially on the network platform side, having, I mean, if you're going to be digital and you don't have a good infrastructure, you're going to be down a lot, right? You're going to be disappointed a lot. So,
Yeah.
so we had to start there. Certainly, the ERP system was definitely the next step of getting engaged with. We use ProShop ERP, and being able to leverage that to start collecting data, and then starting to fill in the holes. I mean, sometimes it's an Excel spreadsheet, sometimes it's a Google form, sometimes it's then the leap into like a powerful machine monitoring system, right? But all the way down to our inspection, having having the inspection software we needed, communicating with the ERP system, all of those, kind of digital investments, if you will, that we had to make. And it took time to find those systems that work for us. Um, but, I think, fast forward now almost 8 years. I mean, I think we have it dialed in pretty tight.
Mm. So what were well, yeah, I mean, you've told me that you've since bought one plant per year. And then your second plant took you 9 to 12 months to get online, and every plant since has been in the 3 to 6 months range. So does
Correct.
that mean you've really kind of like dialed into your tech stack, your suite of tools, and you just find that they can be applied to other plants? Do you have to make a lot of adjustments per other plants? Or do you really have it dialed in? Does that make sense?
I feel like we have it dialed in pretty tight, right? So we have, if you listen to me on By the Numbers at all, you've heard me just say, like, I have my secret sauce, right? I mean, it's not secret. I talk about it on the podcast all the time. It's not that it's a top secret sauce. It's just my sauce, right? And so, yeah, even down to the brand of, Wi-Fi routers we use, all that type of stuff. It's all standardized. The tablets and the PCs that go on the shop floor are the same. And so you end up from a hardware and an infrastructure standpoint being very standardized, very easy to implement. Um, and then rolling that out, doing the training. I mean, now that we have, we're 70 something employees now, I'll say 75, we'll call it. I mean, when everybody knows the systems and the processes that we use, it's, even just from a training perspective and a rollout perspective, it just kind of keeps getting quicker, right? So even the most recent acquisition we did in July, I mean, I can sit here today and tell you it's frustrating it's taken so long. I mean, the reality is we're 4.5 months into it, and it's and we feel like that's forever. Um, and we're essentially done with it. But there's just still little hiccups here and there, and a little bit more training we need to do on this side or that side. But yeah, I mean, I think the more you dial it in, and the more your team, your people, and your know your systems that develop your processes, you can really get down to a pretty quick implementation plan that, in the grand scheme of things, is really not that long. Even if, like
Now,
I said, I sit here feeling like it is, it's not.
yeah, I think 3 to 6 months seems pretty quick to my ears. Were there any solutions that you weren't able to port from plant to plant to plant? Something that needed, because I'm imagining the manufacturer listening to this who has multiple plants and they want to get going on a similar type of journey. Were there any tools that you weren't able to easily standardize from plant to plant? If there's going to be kind of a log jam or something that needs a monkey wrench, what is that? Maybe there's more than one thing. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, in general, no. Like from a unable, absolutely not. This most recent one, for example, I mean, there's been a few little things that's like that we haven't really dealt with in the past that we didn't have a system for, right? So, for example, um, this new acquisition, we manufacture a machine for the packaging industry as part of the operations, and we sell parts and supplies for that machine online and accept credit cards for the payment, and then creates a pick list, ship it out, right? Well, historically, our companies have not had online sales, and they haven't had, same day UPS pickups of parts that are in. They haven't had credit card. We haven't had significant credit card sales, and we haven't had, order by two, it ships today type methodology, right? Well, there's systems behind each of those things that the existing company, the company that we purchased, had in place. So we've had to integrate those things, which have, it's been a little bit of a learning curve because, again, we didn't really take credit cards on a daily basis, right? We take credit cards 3 times a year, so we need to integrate that into our entire process of accepting an order and shipping it. But again, there's tools out there to do it, right? I mean, that's just really as simple as getting with your bank and finding out, what merchant account you need and getting it done, and then integrating it, with the new systems. But when you look at, I think when you look at your core, as far as Again, I'm in manufacturing, so I need to accept an order. I need to get it done. I need to have a lot of quality. I need to ship it, and I need to invoice it. Um, the core function of that is we have pretty well established. So it's just a matter of a few little systems, to help with that.
It's like we have a question here. Can you speak to your customer base a little? Meaning, do you have a lot of repeat customers, long runs, or a lot of short runs? It says, I understand the short and long are relative. Just wondering whether the data collection is more helpful for one or the other. Question.
Yeah, so across our 4 facilities, I would say we have a pretty big mix. I would say 90% of our business is repeat customers there. Now, the long runs, short runs, that's where the mix comes in. So we have, so at Hill, where I'm sitting today, is definitely a high mix, low volume shop. And I would say all of our other locations are really more high volume, low mix. 90% of what they ran a couple months ago. As far as how does the data affect that, I would say it affects them both, highly affects them both in different ways, right? So on our longer run production stuff, that's where we can really take data and dial in, right? Like we can literally look and see if we changed the brand of a drill, did it affect the outcome of, did we save 30 seconds on a cycle time, 3 seconds on a cycle time, whatever. Um, so that's one way we would look at the data on a production style run or parts that we run. On the shorter time stuff, I mean, I would almost say it's more critical, or the shorter runs. I would almost say the data probably helps us more, right? Because we may have just bid this job, we have targets we need to hit. Um, Being able to track that in real time, like through machine monitoring or whatever, and know it came off the saw late, right? Maybe it's going to go to saw 3 or 4 machine operate. I mean, there's a finishing operation, whatever. If we know it came off the saw, took longer at the saw than expected, we can start to fix that job, right? We can start looking for improvements in that so that we hit our budgets, we hit our timelines, and so forth. We're probably not looking at the data as much as like if we use this insert or that insert on a turning operation or a drill or something like that. We're looking at a bigger picture, but those jobs can also make or break you. I mean, the setup times, I mean, really all jobs in what we do, most of the majority of the cost is in setup times. So if those start getting out of hand, um, the quicker we can see that, the better. Also, the systems give us, plenty of ability to see even just we go back to tooling, like picking the right tooling, setting up the right tooling, all those types of things. The more data we have driving those decisions, the better.
I want to take quick, a quick jaunt into something different. Excuse me. Infrastructure work. I'm curious, how much infrastructure work do you have to perform at a new plant on average? If that's a fair question.
It's generally not enough, not much. We will, like I said earlier, we'll go in. I mean, some of them we bought have had fine infrastructure to start with, and you can really just hit the ground running. We generally will normalize on a set of from a hardware perspective, particular brands, and that's so that the IT folks can manage everything under one platform and so forth. The cost on that, a lot of that stuff has come down so dramatically, at least in my opinion, since I've been kind of dealing with it for 30 years. Now it just almost seems like it's a commodity, right? So, the benefits of having a standardized platform tend to outweigh the costs of that, but it's not it's usually not prohibitive by any means, and it's not that difficult. A lot of people already have uh, a lot of network cabling in their buildings. I mean, that's been going on for a long time. Most of what we do nowadays, honestly, is Wi-Fi driven anyway. So, making sure you have that good coverage out there generally answers most of the questions.
So I assume you're looking at KPIs like OEE and yield and the kind of basic stuff that we're getting from these systems. So if it's taking you less and less time to install these systems in your plants, are you seeing improvements in your numbers happening faster, or is it still kind of the same amount of time, regardless of what you're putting in? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I would definitely say, I mean, I'm getting real data on day one now, right? So, again, I'll reference the shop we bought most recently, just because we're kind of in the throes of it. Um, it's 85% probably repeat work, and we've had it for 4.5 months, 5 months, something like that. Um, given those two things said, we've now run almost every job we're running once in the system before, right? So
Mhm.
so we now have something to benchmark against. Prior to that, we didn't know, right? But now we have something to benchmark again. In another 3 months, we'll be able to benchmark again, and we'll be able to start really seeing improvements. But to give you like a real life example, we had a part last week that we were running for the second time. Um, they've been running this part for probably 20, 30 years. 3 minute cycle time on a lathe. I mean, you aren't going to get much quicker than that, right? Probably not a lot of room for improvement. But because we had data to look at, um, and an inquisitive person, right? I mean, it takes someone caring to look and go, can this be improved? Um, the operator with my main manufacturing engineer sat down, looked at some of the data, and said, yeah, maybe if we change this one part of the they changed some speeds and feeds. I don't even know what all they did, honestly. But we took a 3 minute and 15-second cycle time down to a minute 58. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a 30% improvement, right? I mean, it's a minute. It can seem insignificant, right? But it's over 30% improvement, um, with no change in tooling costs, no change in anything, just by nature of having data to look at. And that over the course of that job runs 1,000 parts at a time, right? I mean, it's 1,000 minutes dropping straight to your bottom line, right? And
Yeah.
it's having that data that makes that available.
We are just about out of time.
And that was
So
quick.
it's about 20 minutes, half an hour is where we go
Yeah.
for. Again, we're talking with Mike Payne, president and owner of Hill Manufacturing Fabrication. Mike, could you tell us again what your podcasts are? If somebody wants to go hear you talk more about manufacturing, where are they going?
Yeah. So if you go to makingchips.com, you'll see all of our shows. The We actually have a total of 9 shows in the network, all around manufacturing. So making chips. And then my show is By the Numbers, spelled BUY. You can find it on the website. You can find it on all your Apple, Spotify, all your podcast platforms. They're on there. You can find us on LinkedIn. Just about any source that is standard to podcast, you'll find us.
All right. With that, I am Dennis Scimeca, Senior Editor for Technology at IndustryWeek. Thank you very much for joining us today for Production Pulse. Mike, thanks for coming by to talk with us. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.